Maine is a place where the map runs out and the unknown begins, where logging roads vanish into shadow, where rivers swallow secrets and the silence lingers longer than memory. Some disappearances here are whispered like folklore, others written into police reports and family grief. Tonight, we dive into 5 of the most chilling vanishings in Maine's history. Cases where the land gave nothing back, and where the woods became the only witness. On Sunday, August 31st, 1975, 4-year-old Kurt Ronald Newton vanished from Natani Point Campground in Coburn Gore, Maine, just 6 miles from the Canadian border. The Newton family, Ron, Jill, their daughter Kimberly, and Kurt, were spending Labor Day weekend camping with friends. That morning, Ron left to gather firewood, while Jill was at the bathhouse with the other mothers, cleaning mud from the children's clothes and shoes. Kurt was left riding his red tricycle along the dirt road of the campground. At around 10:30 a.m., a 12-year-old camper named Lou Ellen Hansen saw Kurt pedaling with determination in that same location, seemingly chasing after his father. That was the last confirmed sighting of the boy. What followed was the most extensive woods search in Maine's history. Thousands of volunteers joined wardens, police, helicopters, scent dogs, and even military aircraft. Searchers dragged ponds, checked logging roads, and ran grid searches across miles of timberland. Despite the scale, no trace was ever found. Kurt's clothing that day was distinctive. A navy blue jacket, a blue sweatshirt with Manchester across the front, brown pants, and blue suede ankle-high shoes. Yet none of these items were ever recovered. Investigators struggled to explain the disappearance. Some believed Kurt had wandered into the woods, chasing after his father, only to succumb to exposure after getting lost. But searches usually recover some evidence: footprints, discarded clothing, or a body within a predictable radius. Here, there was none. Others suspected abduction, though such an act would have required speed and boldness in a crowded campground on a holiday weekend. Still others considered animal predation, but predators leave signs: drag marks, disturbed brush, blood. None were found. Nearly 50 years later, the mystery endures. Kurt Newton's disappearance remains unsolved. His red tricycle was never recovered. On the morning of November 25th, 1975, just 2 days before Thanksgiving, Ludger Belanger, age 25, set out to hunt in the snowy woods of Washington, Maine, near Route 105. His wife Linda and his brother dropped him off around 9 a.m. He carried his .30-30 hunting rifle and promised he would be back within the hour. When he failed to return, his family raised the alarm. Searchers combed the woods, following the tracks until they ended abruptly. Investigators quickly suspected foul play. The evidence suggested that someone may have intercepted Ludger as he dragged a deer, taking both the venison and his life. The snow told investigators a partial story. Boot prints led to a deer that Ludger had shot. dressed, and begun dragging toward the road. But then, the tracks stopped. There was no rifle, no deer, and no Ludger. His family has long believed he was killed for the meat, a crime of hunger and violence buried beneath the snow. Investigators focused on 2 men reportedly in the area that morning. Witness accounts and circumstantial evidence hinted at their involvement, but no formal charges were ever filed. The rifle and the deer were never recovered, and Ludger's body was never found. The case carried unsettling details. Ludger's tracks undid unnaturally, as if erased by human hands. His belongings vanished without a trace. The search produced no evidence of exposure, no signs of animal predation, and no indication he had simply wandered off. For investigators, the absence of natural explanations pointed squarely to human intervention. For Linda and her daughters, the loss was devastating. Thanksgiving passed with an empty chair at the table, and the years that followed brought no closure. Nearly 50 years later, the mystery persists. Ludger Belanger never came home, and those who may know why have never spoken. On May 20th, 1983, Jessie Albertine Hoover, a 54-year-old woman from White Settlement, Texas, was last seen at Baxter State Park headquarters in Millinocket, Maine. Jessie had come north, seeking adventure on the Appalachian Trail, determined to hike the legendary wilderness south of Katahdin. She had little hiking experience, and she suffered from epilepsy, conditions that left her vulnerable in the rugged terrain. Her life had recently been marked by loss. Just months earlier, in November of 1982, her husband Eugene was killed in a tragic car accident. Newly widowed, Jessie set her sights on the trail as a way to reclaim her purpose. She carried only a blue knapsack, wore blue jeans, a blue sweatshirt, and a blue windbreaker. The 100-mile wilderness is one of the most remote stretches of the Appalachian Trail. Dense forests, bogs, rivers, and terrain that challenges even seasoned hikers. On May 20th, Hoover checked in at the Baxter State Visitor Center, telling the attendant that she planned to tackle the trail and asking if the weather still seemed fit for the trek. Jessie never checked out of the park. When she was reported missing in July of 1983, searchers scoured the woods. They found no pack, no clothing, no trace. Investigators struggled to explain her disappearance. Some believe Jessie had wandered off trail and succumbed to exposure, her lack of gear and experience sealing her fate. Others pointed to her epilepsy, suggesting a seizure or collapse deep in the woods. But searches found no remains. And then there were the whispers of darker possibilities. An accident concealed by terrain, or human intervention. What makes Jessie's case so haunting is the total absence of evidence. In most disappearances along the Appalachian Trail, searchers eventually recover something. A clue, a body, a trace. Here, the trail remained silent. The Appalachian Trail begins in Maine, and sometimes it ends there too. On May 12, 1977, 18-year-old Bernard "Bunny" Ross Jr. walked away from his family's home in Fort Kent, Maine. He was under strain. Rumors spread that he had stolen a truck, and he was already struggling with depression. Bunny never returned. Later that day, the truck was discovered abandoned on a dirt road near the Ashland-Portage town line, along the Realty Road. Inside, there were no signs of a struggle, and outside, there were no footprints leading away. The vehicle was simply left behind, and Bunny was gone. Search teams moved quickly, combing the timberlands with wardens, police, and volunteers. The Realty Road cuts through vast tracts of spruce and logging country, but despite days of effort, nothing surfaced. No clothing, no belongings, no body. The disappearance was total. Theories emerged. Some believed Bunny had fled into the woods, overwhelmed by suspicion and despair. Others suspected foul play, pointing to the abandoned truck as evidence that someone else might have been involved. Still others thought an accident was possible, though searches usually yield some trace. Here they did not. For decades, his parents lived with the silence. Then in 2016, nearly 40 years after Bunny vanished, an anonymous letter arrived at the Ross family home. It claimed to hold answers. Investigators confirmed its authenticity but never revealed its contents. Police publicly urged the writer to come forward, calling the letter unlike anything they had ever seen before. For the family, it was a cruel reminder that someone, somewhere, still knows the truth. Bunny's case is not remembered for the indifference of the forest, but for the secrecy of men. The truck was found, the woods were searched, and yet the truth remains withheld. To this day, Bernard "Bunny" Ross Jr. is missing, his fate locked away not by the woods, but by human silence. On a dead-end road in Greenbush, Maine, stood the home of 66-year-old Guy Carmel, a quiet and friendly man, a small business owner, living on 10 acres of wooded property with his wife, Michelle. Guy was last seen on March 10th, 2017. The strangest part? He wasn't reported missing until November. There were rumors he planned to head south to Florida for work and to fix his boat, but investigators later found no sign he ever packed, traveled, or made any preparations to leave. After that day, he simply disappeared. No phone activity, no bank use, no confirmed sightings. By the time police were finally notified, whatever clues might have existed, footprints, disturbed brush, a neighbor's memory, were already long gone. The Penobscot County Sheriff's Office opened a case, and soon the Maine State Police Major Crimes Unit took over. When investigators searched the property, they brought cadaver dogs and evidence teams. They combed the woods, the outbuildings, and the dead-end road that led nowhere but back to the Carmel home. They found nothing. Not a scrap of clothing. Not a single footprint. no trace of the missing man. Neighbors insisted the Carmels were well-liked and quiet, a couple with no known conflicts, which only makes the silence around his disappearance feel stranger. 2 years later, in 2019, police returned with what they called new information. They searched again. Same woods, same property. But whatever that information was, it never became public. And whatever they were hoping to find, they didn't. One detail stands out in this case. There are no public statements from Michelle, Guy's wife, and no clear explanation for why she waited half a year to report him missing. She was the last known person who may have seen him, but her role in the timeline remains almost entirely unaddressed in the official records. Today, the disappearance of Guy Carmel is officially labeled suspicious. A man vanishes. 6 months pass before anyone calls for help. A dead-end road in the Maine woods keeps its secrets. One thing is for certain. Something happened on that quiet rural property. But with only the trees to witness it, we may never know what truly happened on that March day in 2017. From the boy on the red tricycle to a man who vanished and no one seemed to notice, these stories remind us that disappearance is not always about wilderness. It's about secrets, silence, and the truths that refuse to surface. Maine's forests and towns hold mysteries that may never be solved, but remembering them keeps the names alive. Because in the end, it is not the darkness that haunts us most. It is the unanswered questions that echo long after the searchlights fade.